Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to it's not the penultimate session, but it is the sort of run up towards drinks and more chat together. So it's great to hear the conversation, and I hope you can sustain that energy for a little bit longer. My name is Moira Sinclair. I'm the Chief Executive of the Paul Hamlyn Foundation, and I'm also Chair of Claw Leadership. I'm a white woman in my 50s with grey hair suddenly. It's a real shock to a lot of people because they haven't seen me for a couple of years and the dye's gone. I'm wearing glasses and a blue dress, and I use the pronoun she, her. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm really enjoying the conversation. I hope you all are as well. There has been some fantastic provocation and a little bit where I think we've swerved it slightly as well, certainly in some of the sessions I've been in. So I would encourage you to bring that air of challenge back into the space again if you haven't felt the need to do it yet. And also for you to check in with somebody you haven't met yet, which was the challenge that Jonathan gave us this morning. What I'm coming away from this thinking is not whether boards and trustees need to change, but why the hell haven't we? That's the kind of feel I've got going on at the moment. And I'm here to introduce Andrew to you. Andrew is the Chief Exec of the Black Country Living Museum, Dudley, and Chair of the Association of Independent Museums. He's been at the Black Country Museum since 2009. He's been Chair of Association of Independent Museums with 1,250 members since 2019, and in March 2020 he was elected Deputy Chair of the National Museums Directors Council. I imagine that it's like herding cats, his chair role, and I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about what he's got to say. So please welcome.
Thank you very much, Moira. No cats allowed, really, I don't think. Listen, I hope your brains aren't full, actually, because, you know, mine feels pretty full. Look, I'm going to try and keep this snappy, because we are into the afternoon. And you'll have to forgive me, I've only just getting used to wearing glasses. Listen, when I was preparing for what I wanted to talk to you today about, my daughter Josie, who's 20, was watching Cunk on Britain. And, God, you have to be careful how you say that. Philomena Cunk on Britain. If you're not familiar with this, Philomena Cunk, played by Diane Morgan, especially if you're a historian, I do recommend that you do check it out. And don't worry, Claw, Hillary, you know, there's a bit of a look of panic on your face that I'm going to go down a rabbit hole of this. But actually, I think the style of actually Diane Morgan playing Cunk, of asking stupid questions to professionals and making us professionals explain them in everyday language, actually is hugely worthwhile, not just for the person asking that stupid question, but also those providing the answers. So I do look forward, actually, maybe next year, to a future Claw conference in Cunk style. I think would be good. I just wanted to say also that I come to this session and talking to you from a point of view of I regard myself as running cultural businesses, really, and I think that's important to say, because that's kind of where my standpoint is, really. And I would congratulate you all on being here today, because I think, you know, that is in itself an astute business decision that you've made. So I congratulate you on that. Before I get into this, there's a couple of things. Firstly, you know, so I do chair the Association of Independent Museums, and we've just landed MPO money or money to support sector support organisations for a second time. So I do thank ACE for being inspired by what we do and investing in us. It's hugely grateful, and I do think it's a very astute investment, given that we do support well over 1,000 museums across the country. So we thank you for that. And I do chair AIM, and I was thinking back to during the pandemic, and this business isolation has been talked about a little bit of leaders, and during the pandemic, I used to get the AIM team just to randomly give me 10 names and phone numbers of AIM members, of AIM chief execs, directors, general managers, whatever they were. And I would just phone them up, whether they wanted that or not, actually, frankly. But I would just phone them up for a chat. And it did strike me how cut off people did feel. Even people who were running really quite big organizations, probably fairly well networked. And often I would just listen, actually, and that in itself was a powerful thing to do. Sometimes I'd offer a little bit of advice, but I think that whole idea, and we're doing it all here, aren't we, together, of the power of networks is hugely, hugely important. So in terms of this session, I posed a couple of questions really to think about in terms of governance. One is, are you using governance and your trustees to expand the intellectual and strategic resource and talent available to your organization, or are you being complicit in its dysfunction? And I also asked, do you suffer board meetings? I think we all know what I mean by that. And I have to admit that, perhaps to no surprise at all, actually, that until relatively recently, that I didn't ask myself that kind of question, really. And if maybe I had, much earlier in my career, and if I'd been very honest with myself, I think I would have answered yes to being, albeit unintentionally, complicit. And yes, I certainly suffered board meetings. Although I don't actually think that it was particularly because of any ill will on my part, but rather I think it was just a poor understanding of boards and governance. And certainly I wasn't seeing the connection between governance and organizational performance, let alone good governance and success. I'm just going to say that again to you. You know, do you make that connection between governance and the performance of your organization? Some of you might have heard me speak before, and certainly know when I've been talking about leadership. I talk initially, this is about myself really, of wanting to be a hero. And not giving enough attention to that now well-worn but no less astute epigram of none of us are as smart as all of us. And my shift away from being heroic and towards consultation, I think, has been a major one, really, as has been the attention to finding really good trustees. And the huge value that they bring. And certainly making that connection between them, that link, if you like, to performance, and really accepting that link. And I think that shift has happened since I joined boards. I think that was the kind of point at which I realized. In terms of addressing that question of whether you are complicit in the dysfunction of boards, maybe boards that you sit on or involved in, I'd invite you to look out, really, for the signs of dysfunction. And I wonder how many of you recognize some of these things. Are there disagreements between trustees and the executives on the fundamentals, including purpose, and I absolutely stress that word purpose, strategy and values? Is there trust and communication, or has it broken down? Nick Sirota, at the beginning of our day, stressed the primacy of this issue, and I think Nick was absolutely right to do so. Do you find boards spend most of their time on short-term management issues and detail? That's a bit of an issue for AIM members, because we're very, very aware that we've got an awful lot of small members, and initially you can't get away often from trustees having to roll up their sleeves and get involved with the day-to-day of the organisation, particularly if they're entirely voluntary-led. But nevertheless, are the board spending too much time on short-term management issues and detail? Are cliques forming in the trustee group or with the staff? Are organisational structures short-circuited? And does the management hide the truth from the board or provide poor or incomplete or ill-timed information? These are all signs, I would say, to look out for in terms of dysfunction. A regular one, I think, and it's been touched on in some of the sessions I've been in, is do boards duck tough decisions? Something keeps regularly coming back, and you look back at maybe minutes and board papers, and there is an issue that keeps coming back and is not being resolved. Is there a weak chair or chief executive, or both? Two particularly striking, I think, measures or signs of dysfunction are board meetings poorly attended, or are trustees ill-prepared for meetings? Just a few more I would highlight for you to think about in your own organizations. No one wants to be the chair. I find that a lot. I get a lot of phone calls. I won't, well, I will tell you. So Joe, who works with me at the museum, says, there's another Dementor on the phone, Andrew. And I love it. It's all right, just to draw out anything that might be left in my brain. But that comes up a lot when I'm talking to trustees and boards. No one wants to be the chair. And that it's also difficult to recruit trustees as well is a sign. And similarly so, have you got a chair or chief executive that is very dominant, overly dominant, alongside a passive membership of a board? Is something very much to look out for. And similarly, in terms of, ducking major issues, are risks being openly discussed and actively managed, or are they kind of being pushed aside? So if you recognize some, perhaps all of those signs, are you prepared to do something about it? How would you, for example, like it and be prepared if the board itself exclusively designed the agenda for meetings rather than the executive? Are you prepared to start to talking and asking awkward questions and to go through that pain barrier to a new, better standard of doing business beyond your initial disruptive behavior? I was in a session in the Foyle studio just earlier on, and this came up a lot, particularly in reference to new trustees, new younger trustees onto a board, about being fearful of being disruptive and asking those awkward questions. And there is certainly a pain barrier to go through, but I think if you can get through it, you are likely to have a much better standard of governance on your organization. What do you know about the organization that you're most concerned about? Are you suppressing your curiosity for fear of unearthing issues? Are you going to look stupid at best and more seriously incompetent if the organization fails? Are you okay with that? I wouldn't be. And this is a topic that's come up a lot in lots of the sessions of today. How is the world shifting in ways that are not mirrored in board discussions? Are you operating effectively in a vacuum where your relevance is slipping away? And what kind of response from your trustees would you get if you asked the question, how well do we know and trust each other? Finally, I would just also ask you to think about how you might define the culture of your organization. Would your trustees have similar or widely different views about the culture of your organization? And if they did, what would that tell you about your board? You know, the absurdity to keep at the front of your mind is that as trustees or a company director, which you're both, don't forget that, you are both, you are responsible for the organization and yet have limited means to really understand it. So be active, not passive, and strive to make the board feel like a team. We've just recently, at my organization at the Black Country, started to use that word team in relation to the board. And I think it's quite a powerful one to think that you're a team that is there to support. So this is the seemingly impossible task that you need to get to grips with if you're going to be a valued trustee. You know, I know there are many, many trustees already here in this room. But if you're not on a board, I do urge you to step up and regard it as much as your day job as your day job. It might just create the conditions you need to find your talent, perhaps a talent that you didn't know you had. So I leave you with this thought. I'm the member of 6 boards at the moment, of which I chair 4, and I deputy chair 1. So there's plenty of opportunities to see if I'm living up to the advice I've offered you today. Thank you for listening. We've got a little bit of time for questions, but listen, let's not allow a troubled world to dim our hope and the influence that we can bring on making lives better as leaders in the arts and cultural sector. Thank you very much.
We've got about 3 minutes left, so you're going to put your hands up very quickly if you have questions, and while you're thinking of them, Andrew, thinking about all the chairs you've known and thinking about your role as a chair, what one action do you think chairs can do to create that sense of collective leadership that you're talking about?
I think give space to all the trustees, have great clarity about what is expected of the trustees, and think strategically, really, is what I would always try and come back to, really, all the time. And the best chairs that I have worked with have done that, really. And to be, you know, in the most basic human instinct, to be welcoming, particularly to new trustees, really. Because you can, if you're not careful, be a bit snobbish about it all, quite honestly, really. And so those are the things I would say.
Are there questions? Anybody got an emergency question in there? Yes, please, right over there.
Andrew, would you be able to share those notes with the panel, with the attendees if possible, because I think there is a lot of brain fullness and I wanted to write everything down.
Yeah, but the only thing is I'm the chair of independent museums, so I'll charge out at about £500 if that's okay. No, of course, absolutely delighted to do that.
It sounds like people want that checklist of dysfunction so they can test their own organisations. There was a question at the back somewhere.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Rolf. I'm here for the Young Trustees Movement. I'm also on a couple of boards I've been leads. I have a question. At the end, you said you're a member of 6 boards. You chair 4. You're vice chair of 1. Throughout today, we heard a lot about how trustee is volunteering. There's a lot of commitment, and so there's this image of certain people are able to dedicate that. You know, is it wise to have one person running so many board charities, and are we perpetuating that image that it's only if you have all that capacity in your day job and your work that you can do that?
Thank you. Excellent, challenging question.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would say that I don't take anything on unless I can give it a full commitment. Absolutely right. I am very fortunate, and I will say this at the top, I am very fortunate that the exec team at the museum, at the Black Country Museum, is very strong. And I actually don't think that I would be in a position to get involved with other organizations if I didn't have such a strong team. And there is always a connection, I think, between boards I'm getting involved with and the museum, really. And so and that's important to me, really. And I do think that I do feel a sense of a civic duty, actually, really. And so I chair a regeneration board in Dudley, and that's absolutely focused on regenerating Dudley, creating jobs, better opportunities, and I see a read across and a civic duty. But you're right with the challenge. But don't take things on unless you absolutely can, and they are time limited, you know. And I try not to overstay my welcome, really. And that's important as well.
I think the one other thing I'd observe as a chair as well is that there is something about the honesty with which you approach your other trustees, and to recognise that people are at very different stages of their lives, and we want those different stages of lives around the board table. So for me, for some of my trustees, I'm not asking for lots of quantity, I'm asking for quality. I'm asking for one really great intervention in one area of the board's business and attendance at all the board meetings, but I'm not asking them to be on 6 different boards at the same time. That's fine with me. It's about the intentionality and the confidence with which we ask our board members to contribute. Right, I'm getting the wave of doom. So that was a really great provocation, Andrew. Thank you so much. I can see people were scribbling like crazy, including me. So I'm now going to go and check my own boards for poor behaviour and dysfunction, and hope that that's not the case too much. Please join me in thanking Andrew.
Thank you very much.